I dressed up a little. Did you notice? I couldn't find my pearls and my crown.
All the best people are crazy. All the best people are.
What's up, crazies? My name's Jessie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am a digital intermediate engineer, also known as a conforming artist, who has been working in post-production for the last couple of years and can tell you a lot about how movies are made and what to notice while watching them. How are you guys doing today? I hope you're doing extremely well because I've seemingly been catching everything that's been going around lately. First I had the flu, then I had a stomach bug, both back to back.
Oh my god, bro.
But thankfully, yours truly is doing much better now. And speaking of yours truly, today I want to answer a very important question that I have seen circling around the net for a couple of years actually. And no one seems to have been able to answer this question in detail. Why does it take Bridgerton 2 whole years to produce a new season? People are angry, people are impatient. I've seen arguments such as, remember back in the day when they were like making whole seasons with 22 episodes within a year? Here they're only making like 8 episodes per season. Why is it taking them so long? Well, there are several reasons. I will be going through them with you and will hopefully be able to ease the public's distraught and help them understand why it takes as long as it takes.
How very perfect indeed.
So, for those of you who haven't seen the show yet, here's a quick little spoiler-free overview. Bridgerton is a period drama that takes place in London in the year 1813 and focuses on the marriage mart of the high society, or ton. The show mostly focuses on one specific family, the Bridgertons. The widowed Lady Violet Bridgerton, who had a love match herself back in the day, is determined to help all of her 8 children find theirs. The Bridgertons have a tradition of naming their children alphabetically. There is Anthony, the eldest, who is to inherit the title and is determined to honor the Bridgerton name. Benedict, who likes art and enjoys not having the responsibilities of the eldest brother. Colin, who likes to travel and journal about what he's seen. Daphne, the eldest sister and model example of a high society woman. Eloise, the feminist who hates the idea of being lunged upon society. Francesca, the introvert who prefers the pianoforte over the company of people. Gregory, the youngest brother who enjoys making fun of his little sister. And finally, Hyacinth, the youngest sister who cannot wait for her own debut into society. Each season focuses on a different Bridgerton sibling and their story of how they will find their match. There are 3 seasons so far, with a small spin-off series called Queen Charlotte, which is about how the queen became the queen. There's also a mysterious gossip writer in the town called Lady Whistledown, whose identity is unknown to the ton, and who writes about every scandalous detail that happens during the marriage mart season. So much for the overview. Now, to answer the question of why it takes 2 years to make this show, I want to take you through every single step that needs to be done while making a professional TV show or movie, mainly focusing here on post-production because that is my area of expertise. Generally, there's always 3 major things: pre-production, production, and post-production. Let's start with pre-production. Since pre-production is the only field I have not yet worked in actively, I can only tell you about what goes on in there through what I've learned in film school, but generally it includes pitching the show and getting it approved, securing the funds and the copyright, in this case the books they were based on, writing the season, which reportedly takes Shonda Rhimes, the genius writer and producer of the show, several months to do, casting the main characters, getting permits for the film locations, securing film equipment and making sure that it works, plan a schedule for when to film what. Shows or movies are never filmed chronologically like the plot goes, but logistically, focusing rather on when they have which location available to them. Plan a schedule for post-production and set deadlines for when each step in post-production has to be finished. Casting the extras, building the sets. This is a major thing in this show. Since it is set in a different time than ours, you can't just go outside and film it on some random street. This step also includes set dressing, meaning everything you see on the show has to be from a different time or at least look like it. For example, furniture, shop windows, or carriages, etc., etc. Then designing and making all the costumes, including wigs and jewelry, fitting all the actors and actresses, plus the extras, they also get a fitting into all of their costumes, wigs, and the makeup, writing the music for the ball scenes, of which there are many of, and choreographing the dances, and finally read-throughs and rehearsals of the scenes with the main cast and also with extras and main cast rehearsing all the dances for the ball. This is all the preparation that I know has to be done before filming starts. If you happen to notice that I missed anything because you know your way around pre-production more than I do, let me know in the comments down below what I missed. Generally, pre-production can take up to 3 to 6 months, and I would guess that for Bridgerton, they are probably also on the longer side. Every season of Bridgerton so far is being filmed for 8 months. That is around 250 days, give and take. This is quite a long time of filming. There are so many ball scenes which take a lot of logistical organizing and pre-planning, and such a scene that's in the final show maybe like 20 minutes can take up to 5 shooting days. When you watch a film, you see the final edited product. But when you actively film something, you need to know that for every different camera angle scene, you have multiple takes because the actors can mess up a line, or the camera could have been out of focus, or the audio's messed up because some of the crew members had to sneeze, etc. Also, for every different angle displayed, you have to relocate the camera, including all of its equipment and the people operating the camera. The lighting, which can take up to 1 or 2 hours to set up depending on the scale of the scene, and the sound department operating, because picture and sound are recorded separately and are synced up later in post-production. One of the most important jobs you can have on a film set is continuity. These people's sole jobs is to ensure that any extras in the background, any objects being used or just seen, and everything on the actors themselves has to be in the exact same position as it was seen from a different angle. The purpose of this is, of course, to be able to edit everything together later without it feeling off because something is different from how it just was moments ago from a different angle. With so many people in one room, I cannot imagine the logistical nightmare it has to be to always make sure and have an overview of everything's and everyone's position at any given moment in the scene that's currently being filmed. If the continuity people don't do their job right, this is how continuity mistakes happen, which other commentary YouTubers always love to point out. But I personally always have a lot of grace with this department because it is one of the hardest jobs you can have on set. And it takes multiple people, especially when there's like 150 people on set. Being on top of that, oh my god, extremely hard. And reshooting is also often too complicated to do or just simply not in the budget. So sometimes producers or filmmakers, they just accept that there will be one shot where an actor's wine glass is more filled in one scene than in the other. It happens. After a shooting day, there are couriers that bring the camera cards with the film material to a department called the day list department, which I had the pleasure of working in. Quick little DI lesson to begin with. There are a multitude of different formats and codecs that a camera can record in. A codec is basically just there to encode and decode the recorded data. Each format and codec has different limits of what it can display and encode, and also what can be done with the footage later in post-production. When filming a Netflix show, the footage is usually recorded in a very high resolution like 4K or sometimes even 8K, and the camera format used as a standard is called RAW, meaning the camera does nothing to the file and doesn't compress anything while recording. It basically records everything the way it just comes into the lens without any alteration or quality loss. That means any luminance and color values that are being recorded have not been altered or repressed on any level and can later in post-production be manipulated and changed in a wide range of possibilities. Now, why does not everybody just record everything in RAW? Why don't our phones, for example, do that? First of all, RAW footage without any alterations looks very flat and boring, as if like all the color has been completely drained from it, because all the color and luminance values are basically set to 0. And secondly, because the camera records everything, the files it creates are huge. A 1-minute clip can be a few gigabytes big.
Holy shit.
And therefore, a Netflix show with like multiple days of footage can be terabytes big.
Holy shit.
It is very normal to have like 180 terabyte big data storage standing right next to me while working. Now, these big RAW files are, like I said, huge and frankly have a terrible playback speed when you try and use them for editing. It can actually overload a CPU of a computer. But when editing a movie, you have to be able to see the footage in real time without it halting all the time. So what do? This is where the dailies department comes in. Cleverly named because it does what I'm about to tell you daily and after every shooting day. When the camera cards arrive, this department immediately inserts them into their programs and backups the entire footage filmed that day just to have it secure. The next step they do is syncing the audio and video files because, like I said, the audio and video were recorded separately on set. Then they move on to grading the footage, basically putting color on it. They take the luminance and color values of the original RAW file and manipulate it and edit it in a way that it just looks good. Because remember, RAW footage looks just really boring. The look that they put onto this raw material is not the final grade. It's just something for the editing team to work with. When they're finished grading the footage, it is then QC'd, which means looking at every single clip from start to finish, watching out for any technical mistakes. This is to ensure that all the footage is usable. We also report if there are any cameras that have lens or sensor issues, or if any scenes need to be reshot because all of the takes were, say, out of focus, etc. When the QC is done, the RAW files are then compressed into files that are much smaller, already have the grading on it, and are synced with the audio to be then sent to the editing team so they have the footage to work with. This whole step of the dailies department happens parallel to the shoot and takes as long as the shoot, which means 8 months in the case of Bridgerton. While the filming is still going on, the editorial department already looks through the files that they receive from the dailies department to sort through it and decide upon which takes they will be using later. Once the shooting is fully wrapped, the editorial fully gets to work and starts editing the entire TV show or movie. When the final edit is finished, the edit gets picture locked, which ordinarily means this is the final edit, nothing will be changed thereafter. Usually. There are exceptions where sometimes they do change the edit after the picture lock, but typically picture lock means picture locked. normally when working on a TV show with multiple episodes, they picture log like one episode at a time or just one or two. So often they are still editing later episodes while the first episodes have already moved on to the next step of the post-production process. The length of the editorial varies from show to show, but for an 8-episode show with an hour-long episode, I would expect around 4 to 5 months. After picture lock, the final edit is then sent off to 2 departments, the sound department and the picture department. The sound department edits the dialogues, adds background noise, music, and Foley. Foley is basically any sounds objects make, like clothing or the actors walking. This is all recorded in post-production, so everything sounds natural. This is a big part and takes a long time. And in the end, they mix it all together. For Bridgerton, this step, I would guess, also takes around 4 to 6 months. At the same time, the picture department gets to work, and that is my department. So let's dive in. The Digital Intermediate department receives the picture log from the editorial. Remember, the editorial worked with compressed files while making the edit. We in the DI department now have the original raw material, and it is our job to rebuild that final edit with the original material. This is called conforming, and the people who do that are also called conforming artists, which I am. Ta-da! During the conforming, we also take shots that are marked as being VFX shots and send them off to a so-called VFX vendor, a different department or company that is specified in making visual effects. Visual effects can be, in this show for example, establishing shots, making an aerial view of London look like it's from 1813. It can also be retouches if there's maybe in a shop window a reflection of a crew member. They can edit that out. Something very popular is birds. When there's an establishing shot and you see a flock of birds flying, like white birds, that's always fake. It's just something that they always love to add for some reason to just, you know, give an establishing shot a lively feel. I remember when I worked on a show that was set in the 1940s, they filmed the city from our time and then they went in and removed all of like the TV antennas from the houses. They replaced the modern cars with old cars. They replaced the pedestrians with people they had filmed before, but then, you know, added them in tiny. Like if we look at this establishing shot of 1813 London, for example, it's only in there for a couple of seconds, but probably took 4 to 5 months to make. When the VFX vendors are done, they send the multiple shots back to us, and the conforming artist puts it back into the movie and checks if it's technically correct. When conforming is done, the edit is then given to the color grading department. They often sit in with the director, camerawoman, and cameraman, or also like producers, and decide together with them how the final look is supposed to be color-wise. Depending on the project, it can take up to 4 weeks to grade. When the grading and sound department are done, we then move on to mastering. Here, the final mix of the movie is added to the final picture and then exported, also called rendering, into various formats the client specified and requested. Finally, the TV show or movie is then watched for any technical mistakes multiple times. Continuity is disregarded here. It's only about any audible or visual mistakes that could have been overlooked or have happened during the rendering process. If any mistakes are found, they are getting repaired until there are no more mistakes. Unless the mistakes are too complicated to fix or not in the budget to be fixed, they are knowingly left in. This is another thing that is actually really funny to me. Many YouTubers like me have made it their goal to find movie mistakes, thinking they're the first to find them. I hate to break it to you, honey, but the people who made the movie, they saw that mistake. They know about that mistake. They left that in knowingly, on purpose, even though you think that you were the first one to find it. I'm sorry. 99.99%, they know about every single mistake that you could ever find. They probably know of mistakes that you didn't even see because they've watched it so many times. And I can vouch for that because I've been QCing so much in the past year. Like, I see everything, but just because you see it doesn't mean you can fix it. All in all, the entirety of the picture department takes several months. In Bridgerton's case, I would venture a month per episode. So 8 months in total. When the QC is done and all the files exported for the client, the movie TV show is then stored in its entirety with the OG footage and the final end product onto so-called LTO tapes. These tapes are analog tapes. It would be too complicated to explain to you how they work. Just know it takes a long time to put anything on them. However, they are used because they have a much longer life expectancy than, say, hard drives. Whereas hard drives can break after 3 to 5 years, LTO tapes are expected to hold at least 50 years.
Wow.
This ensures that the data keeps much longer, and it is also done so the movie or TV show can be restored for any type of scenario. You always have a backup and you can just restore it without any quality loss. Also, after the final file export, the project is then distributed to its target platform. Between the finalization of a project by the post-production house and its release date on Netflix, it is normal to have a gap of like 3 to 5 months circa. Because in this time period, Netflix can upload it on their end, make sure everything runs smoothly, and prepare it for release. Often, this is also where dubs and subs are being finalized and made ready for release. We did it! Wow. This is how any professional TV show or movie is made. Especially Netflix has very strict rules and regulations you have to follow throughout the entire production and post-production progress. Also, one more thing to know, for every single step, there is one person that has final say. They can reject the edit or the VFX shot or whatever that actually could be done, but it's not yet fitting the vision that like the producer or director or supervisor, whoever had. So many things have to be redone, which also takes more time. When you look at Bridgerton's production quality, and now knowing what all the steps are, it is no wonder it takes so long. Of course, I don't know exact numbers because I was not part of the project myself and can only guesstimate the length of each step, and all we know for sure is the shooting time of 8 months. But from my experience, from working in this industry and working with Netflix, I know how long these things tend to take. And from a technical aspect, I can also barely find any mistakes, which means they spent a lot of time repairing any, which shows how important quality is to them. There are many factors that play into making this show, which you can easily forget when it only takes you 8 hours to watch an entire season. But for example, Queen Charlotte's legendary swan wig in season 3 took around 2 years to make. And that is only one wig. How many wigs are in this show? Clearly, these people are working overtime because within only 2 years, they managed to do everything that I just mentioned and with an extremely high production standard. Like, if you compare Bridgerton to a show, let's say, like Pretty Little Liars, which was a teen drama set in the early 2010s that had 22 episodes for each season, and each episode was about 45 minutes long. The production quality is laughably incomparable. For Pretty Little Liars, they did not need to build sets as elaborate. They could film on random streets because it is set in our time. Pretty Little Liars has the same few sets. Bridgerton has a different set for almost every ball that needs to be built. Also, they filmed on already built sets that were used in many other shows that came before, like Gilmore Girls or The Mentalist. In Pretty Little Liars, they can use modern cars. In Bridgerton, you need to build carriages and handle horses on set. They didn't need as many extras as Bridgerton because there were no elaborate balls. The costumes were easy to purchase because it was modern fashion, not like in Bridgerton, where everything needs to be handmade. There was just much less to coordinate in shows from back then. Or, let's compare it to a 22 episode per season fantasy show, like Once Upon a Time, where you also had to make costumes and build sets. But even though they had to make costumes and build sets, they were, again, not as elaborate. And not to mention, the VFX in Once Upon a Time is so laughably bad, it can't even compare to the quality of Bridgerton. And in a show like Pretty Little Liars, they had almost no VFX at all, apart from maybe some retouches here and there. These older shows with 22 episodes per season every year just did not take as much time to make as Bridgerton does. What I'm trying to say is, it's easy to forget how long it takes to make art. And Bridgerton is very beautiful art, made with very high quality, with much detail and thought and love put into it, but also a lot of time and effort and work. It takes a long time to make any movie, and especially one with such incredible production standard as Bridgerton. If you measure in everything that I just mentioned that has to be achieved in order to make a high quality TV show, 2 years, in fact, is fast. 2 years for basically an 8-hour movie? That's incredibly fast. So maybe we can all agree that yes, they are taking their time, but it's what is needed in order for it to meet our high expectations. Because the more time spent on a TV show, the higher its overall quality is gonna be. And let's be honest, waiting 2 years for a story to continue is nothing. There are sequels to movies that we had to wait for much longer. I'm just incredibly glad that Bridgerton is as successful as it is, and that Netflix hasn't cancelled it yet. And I really hope it stays that way because it is an incredible show and one of my most favorite ones out there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want me to react to more of Bridgerton, maybe even watch every single episode with you, let me know in the comments down below. And also tell me what else I should watch. Also tell me what you think of the show and if you enjoy it as much as I do. Be sure to follow my social media. You'll find the links to my TikTok and my Instagram down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel and to my second channel, Jessie Grace, where I am starting out as an indie musician. Turn on notifications to never miss an upload and the amazing content coming your way. Stay crazy. See you next time. Bye!
Flawless, my dear.